Lime's teacher, Miss Thompson, began sending notes home. Lime seems distant. Lime doesn't participate in group activities. We're concerned about Lime's social development. At school, Lime became known as the weird girl who talks to animals. During recess, while other children played tag and jumped rope, she could be found in the far corner of the playground, sharing her lunch with stray cats or talking softly to injured birds. One day, she tried to help a limping dog near the school, only to be mocked by her classmates. "Animal freak," they called her, laughing as she ran away in tears. Clay would find crumpled drawings under Lime's bed, pictures of a family, with Emily's face drawn from photographs and stories, always surrounded by animals. The sight would make Ka's heart ache, understanding that her youngest daughter was trying to piece together a family she never fully knew, seeking comfort in creatures who couldn't judge or leave. Welcome to the HeartForce channel, where you and I find more meaning in life through dog stories. Before we continue, please comment below and let us know where you're listening to this video. And if you have any stories about my loyal friend, please share them with us. Dinner times became exercises in silence. Lime would push food around her plate, answering questions with whispers or shrugs. Colin would attempt jokes that fell flat, while Ka tried to fill the void with cheerful chatter about neighborhood events. But the empty chair at the table, Emily's chair, seemed to grow larger every day. Lime's isolation deepened. The breaking point came during Lime's first parent-teacher conference in Reno. Mrs. Bradley, her new teacher, spoke gently but firmly. Lime hasn't made a single friend since starting here. She spends every recess alone, drawing her notebook. When other children approach, she literally hides behind her hair. I'm worried about her emotional well-being. That night, Ka found Lime sitting on the back porch, staring at the stars. "The animals understand," Lime whispered when her mother sat beside her. "They know what it's like to be lonely, too." The words hit Ka like a physical blow, forcing her to confront the reality that in trying to protect themselves from more pain, they might be losing their second daughter to a different kind of darkness. As autumn turned to winter in Reno, the Harvey family struggled to find their footing in this new life. Their house, though beautiful, felt too big, too empty, too quiet. The neighbors were friendly, but distant, perhaps sensing the cloud of grief that hung over the family. Lime's drawings became darker, filled with shadows and rain, reflecting the growing storm in her young heart. What they didn't know was that fate was about to intervene in the most unexpected way, through a broken-down pit bull with eyes that seemed to mirror Lime's own loneliness. Rex had once been a legend. Before the shelter, before the sickness, before his world had crumbled around him, Rex had been one of the most remarkable search and rescue dogs in the country. 6 years ago, Miss Jenkins, then a young rescue dog trainer, had met the eager pit bull with unusually intelligent eyes. From the start, Rex showed an extraordinary ability to sense distress, as if he could read the emotions of those around him. Under Miss Jenkins' guidance, Rex excelled in his training. His powerful build, combined with an exceptionally gentle nature, made him perfect for rescue work. While other dogs might become excited or aggressive in stressful situations, Rex maintained a calm, focused demeanor. He seemed to understand instinctively that his role was not just to find people, but to comfort them. His first major rescue came during a devastating forest fire. While other dogs were forced to turn back due to the heat and smoke, Rex pressed forward, leading rescuers to a family trapped in a remote cabin. The image of Rex emerging from the smoke, guiding a young girl to safety, made national news. "Hero Pit Bull Defies Stereotypes," the headlines read. For a while, Rex became the poster dog for changing perceptions about his breed. Over the next 4 years, Rex's record became legendary. 27 successful rescues, including finding lost hikers, earthquake survivors, and even victims of avalanches. His greatest triumph came when he located a missing 3-year-old who had wandered into the wilderness. After 2 days of searching, when hope was fading, Rex picked up the scent and refused to give up. He found the child, curled up in a hollow tree, cold but alive. But fate, as it often does, is cruel, even to heroes. During a particularly challenging winter rescue, Rex and his handler, Jack Morrison, were caught in a sudden storm. Rex managed to locate the stranded hiker, but in the process of leading them to safety, he was injured protecting Jack from falling debris. The physical wounds healed, but Jack, haunted by guilt and unable to face the possibility of Rex being hurt again, retired him from service. At first, Rex was placed with a wealthy family who had followed his story in the news. They treated him like a trophy, showing him off at parties, but failing to understand that Rex needed a purpose, a connection. As his celebrity faded, so did their interest. They returned him to the shelter, claiming he was too much responsibility. The rejection broke something in Rex. The proud rescue dog, who had once bounded confidently into danger, now cowered in the corner of his kennel. His coat, once gleaming, became dull and matted. He stopped eating regularly, and a persistent cough developed into a serious respiratory infection. The shelter's veterinarian diagnosed him with pneumonia, complicated by depression. Miss Jenkins, who had followed Rex's career from afar, was devastated to find him in such a condition. She took a job at the shelter specifically to care for him, but despite her best efforts, Rex continued to decline. He seemed to have lost not just his health, but his will to live. Other potential adopters visited, took one look at the sickly pit bull, and moved on to younger, healthier dogs. The final blow came when budget cuts forced the shelter to make difficult decisions. They could no longer afford the medical care Rex needed. Miss Jenkins fought for him, using her own savings for his medications, but eventually, even she had to accept that they were running out of options. The once great rescue dog was now just another statistic, another unwanted animal taking up space and resources. Miss Jenkins arrived early on the morning of Rex's scheduled euthanasia. Her heart ached as she approached the kennel where he lay, his frail body barely visible beneath the mound of straw and blankets. The shelter, once a place of bustling activity, felt quieter now, as though the very walls understood the weight of the decision they were about to make. She sat beside Rex, her fingers running gently through his thin, matted fur. She whispered the same words she had said to him 1,000 times, words she had said to him when he was a vibrant, heroic dog, a dog who had brought hope to so many. "You are the best of us, Rex," she murmured softly, tears gathering in her eyes. "You deserve so much more." But despite the grief that tugged at her heart, Miss Jenkins knew the hard truth. They had no other choice. Rex was too sick. No one had stepped forward to adopt him. He was a shadow of the dog he once was, and in the world of shelters, time and resources were luxuries they could no longer afford. As she prepared to administer the final injection, a small voice interrupted her thoughts. "No, please don't," the voice pleaded, tremulous but filled with determination. Miss Jenkins looked up in surprise. A small figure stood in the doorway. Lime. The little girl, her cheeks streaked with tears, had dashed past the startled shelter staff. She was standing there, her tiny hands gripping the bars of Rex's cage, her face pale and pleading. "He's sad like me," Lime whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "He just needs someone to love him." The room fell silent. The only sound the soft, trembling sobs of the girl who had come to save a dog, even when the rest of the world had given up on him. For the first time in weeks, Rex lifted his head. His dull eyes, which had been devoid of hope for so long, met Lime's gaze. And in that moment, something flickered in his eyes, a spark, however faint, of recognition, as though between two lonely souls. Something understood. Lime's hands pressed against the bars of the cage, her fingers trembling, but her voice was steady. "I'll love you, Rex," she whispered, as if offering the very lifeblood of her soul. "I'll take care of you." Miss Jenkins, standing just behind her, fought back a sob. She had been prepared to say goodbye, but now she was witnessing something beautiful, something unexpected. It wasn't just the girl saving Rex, it was Rex, in a way, saving her. In the silence that followed, Miss Jenkins knew that the decision wasn't hers to make. Lime had already made it. The Harvey family had moved to Reno a year ago, hoping the fresh start would help them heal. But the pain of their past clung to them like a second skin. 3 years before, they had lost their first child, Emily, to a rare genetic disorder. The pain of watching their daughter wither away in a sterile hospital room had left deep scars. When Lime was born 2 years later, she had been their miracle, their second chance at happiness. But the shadow of Emily's death loomed large, even as they tried to start fresh in Reno. Clay and Ka Harvey were not bad parents, but they were broken. Every day, Ka would hold her breath as she watched Lime sleep, terrified of losing another child. Colin, on the other hand, threw himself into work, hoping that the endless meetings and spreadsheets would shield him from the grief. The decision to move to Reno had been practical. Better schools, cleaner air, a smaller community. But deep down, they were running from the ghost of Emily. The playground where she had once laughed, the hospital where she had taken her last breath. Those memories were too painful to bear. Lime, too, had felt the weight of her parents' grief. The quiet child by nature, Lime withdrew even further after the move. She spent hours alone in her room, filling sketchbooks with drawings of lonely creatures, a bird with a broken wing, a cat without a home, a dog waiting at an empty window. Her teacher, Mrs. Bradley, had sent notes home. Lime seems distant. She doesn't participate in group activities. We're concerned about her social development. Lime had become known as the weird girl who talks to animals. And, just like her family, she was alone. But things were about to change, and it would begin with a dog that had known pain, loneliness, and rejection, just like her. The day Rex entered the Harvey family's life was like any other Saturday at the Reno Animal Shelter. But for Lime, it was the beginning of something extraordinary. As they wandered through the rows of kennels, Lime clung to her mother's hand, her other arm wrapped tightly around her worn sketchbook. The shelter was noisy, with barking dogs and excited children pointing at various animals. Lime tried to shrink into herself, overwhelmed by it all. And then, as they passed the quarantine section, Lime stopped. Without a word, she slipped her hand from Ka's grasp and walked toward a dark corner kennel. There, lying quietly on the floor, was Rex. At first glance, Rex seemed like just another dog, once strong, now weak and sickly. But Lime saw something different. She saw the spark in his eyes, the same one that flickered inside her. He was lonely, too. "He's sad like me," Lime whispered, her voice stronger than it had been in months. Her mother, who had always tried to shield Lime from the world's cruelty, called out, "Honey, not that one. He's not in good shape." But Lime was already moving closer. She pressed her small hand against the bars of the cage, and for the first time in weeks, Rex lifted his head. Their eyes met, and something passed between them. A recognition, perhaps, of kindred spirits. Lime's heart swelled, a quiet sense of connection blooming inside her chest. She knew that Rex, like her, had been broken, but she also knew that together they could heal. "I'll love you," Lime whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "I'll take care of you." In the days that followed, the Harvey family found themselves wrestling with the decision to adopt Rex. It was not an easy decision. Rex's condition was serious, and his medical bills would be astronomical. They had only recently begun to heal from the loss of Emily, and the weight of taking on another broken soul felt daunting. But Lime's unwavering determination to bring Rex home, coupled with the support from Miss Jenkins and the shelter, eventually tipped the scale. It was time for a new beginning for Rex and for Lime. When they brought him home, the family was cautiously optimistic. But they had no idea that they were about to embark on a journey that would change not just their lives, but the entire neighborhood. Rex's first night at the Harvey home was filled with uncertainty. He was weak, his breathing shallow and labored, but there was something undeniably comforting about his presence. Despite his frailness, Rex seemed to settle into the corner of Lime's room with a sense of familiarity, as though he knew he was meant to be there. Lime sat beside him, her small fingers gently stroking his fur. For the first time in months, she spoke to him, her words soft and filled with the kind of tenderness she hadn't shown anyone, not even her parents. "You're home now, Rex," she whispered, her voice a little stronger than it had been the day before. "You're safe." And as the days passed, Lime's connection with Rex only deepened. Every morning, she would be the first to wake up, carefully preparing Rex's medications and mixing them into soft food. She would speak to him in soothing tones, telling him about her day or reading her favorite books aloud. Slowly but surely, Rex seemed to improve. His coat began to regain its shine, and his eyes, once dull, now sparkled with a sense of alertness. For Lime, it was nothing short of miraculous. She had never expected to find a companion like Rex, someone who truly understood her. She had spent so much of her life feeling isolated and misunderstood, but now, with Rex by her side, everything felt different. Each day, as Rex regained strength, Lime grew stronger too. She began to speak more freely at home, sharing stories with her parents and even laughing at jokes that Clay and Ka made. It was as though the presence of Rex had unlocked a part of her heart that had been locked away for far too long. But Rex's journey to healing wasn't without setbacks. His respiratory issues, which had been exacerbated by the poisoning attempt, continued to cause problems. There were days when his breathing became labored, and Lime would sit beside him, tears streaming down her face, whispering her desperate prayers for his recovery. She refused to let him give up. "I'm here, Rex," she would say, her hand on his chest, feeling his shallow breaths. "We're in this together." One of the most challenging days came when a sudden storm hit Reno. The wind howled outside, and the thunder rumbled in the distance, setting off Rex's anxiety. Lime had always been afraid of thunderstorms, hiding under her blankets whenever the storms rolled in. But this time it was different. She wasn't alone, and neither was Rex. Instead of running for cover, Lime sat next to Rex, gently stroking his fur and talking to him in a soothing voice. "It's okay, Rex. We're brave together." For the first time in her life, Lime wasn't hiding from a storm. She was confronting it, side by side with her best friend. Rex seemed to find comfort in her presence, too. His shaking began to subside, and before long, he was lying next to her, his head on her lap as the storm raged outside. The bond between the two was growing stronger every day, and with each passing moment, Lime's confidence blossomed. She wasn't just healing Rex. He was healing her too. The neighborhood, however, had not yet fully embraced their new addition. Despite Rex's heroic past and the way he had already begun to change Lime's life, there were still whispers behind closed doors. Some neighbors, particularly Sarah Miller, the neighborhood watch coordinator, remained deeply suspicious of Rex. She had rallied against Rex's presence, believing that his breed was dangerous, and her influence over some of the other residents only made matters worse. "Pit bulls are killers," she would mutter as she crossed the street to avoid Rex and Lime during their walks. Lime could feel the tension in the air. She saw the way people avoided them in the park, how some parents would quickly usher their children indoors whenever Rex came near. It hurt her, more than she wanted to admit, but she wasn't going to let it stop her. She wouldn't let anyone make her feel ashamed of Rex, not after everything he had done for her. And then, one morning, something unexpected happened. Lime was walking Rex to the mailbox when she noticed a group of kids gathering at the corner of the street. Her heart raced as she saw Sarah Miller's daughter, Ashley, pointing and whispering to her friends. But this time, Lime didn't turn away. She didn't retreat into herself like she had done before. Instead, she stood tall and walked directly toward them, Rex by her side. "Hi, Ashley," Lime said, her voice steady. She had no idea where the courage came from, but felt right. "You want to meet Rex?" Ashley looked at her, surprised by Lime's sudden confidence. She hesitated for a moment, then nodded slowly. Lime crouched down and gently patted Rex on the head, urging him to sit. "This is Rex," she said softly. "He used to be a rescue dog. He saved a lot of people before he got sick. He's a hero." For a moment, Ashley said nothing, but her eyes softened as she looked at Rex. She seemed to notice something different in him, the same thing Lime had seen from the beginning. Rex wasn't just a dog. He was a companion, a friend, a healer. The other kids gathered around, intrigued by the gentle pit bull who sat quietly at Lime's feet. For the first time, Lime felt a sense of belonging. She wasn't just the girl with the weird dog anymore. She was the girl with a hero dog, a dog who had taught her to be brave, and now he was teaching the whole neighborhood. By the time they reached the mailbox, the group of kids had gathered around Rex, asking questions about his past, about the rescues he had been part of, about the way he had saved so many lives. And for the first time, Lime felt like she was sharing something powerful, something that mattered. She wasn't alone anymore, and neither was Rex. As the weeks went by, Rex's health continued to improve, and the neighborhood began to change. Slowly but surely, the tension started to lift. More neighbors began to see Rex for what he truly was, a hero, not a threat. But it wasn't just Rex who was transforming. Lime, too, was becoming someone new. She was no longer the lonely, quiet girl who hid in her room. She was the girl who had found her voice, her courage, and her purpose. And it was all because of a dog who had refused to give up, even when the world had given up on him. The first signs of trouble came when the Harvey family received an anonymous letter. It was tucked inside their mailbox, among the usual pile of bills and advertisements. As Ka reached for the envelope, she felt a sinking feeling in her stomach, an odd mix of dread and anticipation. She had grown used to the whispers from some of the neighbors, but this felt different. When she opened the letter, her heart sank further. The words were bold, slashing at their already fragile peace. Remove that dangerous dog from the neighborhood. He's a threat to you all. You're responsible if anything happens. Think of your children. Ka's hands shook as she passed the letter to Clay. The weight of the words hung heavy in the air. It wasn't just Rex they were after, it was the Harvey family. It was Lime, her daughter who had fought so hard to reclaim her voice and to embrace the love Rex had given her. We can't let this continue, Ka said, her voice hard with resolve. She knew Rex was more than just a dog to them. He had become a symbol, a reminder that no matter the darkness, love and second chances could transform lives. But Rex's growing presence in their lives had created more division in the neighborhood. Sarah Miller, ever the leader of the opposition, had organized a meeting for concerned parents. The atmosphere was thick with judgment and fear. What if he snaps? She asked, her voice laced with suspicion. What if he hurts someone? These dogs are time bombs waiting to go off. I won't let my children play outside with a dog like that so close. It was the same old rhetoric, the same baseless prejudices. But this time, it hit harder because it wasn't just directed at Rex. It was directed at Lime, at the Harvey family, at everything they had fought to rebuild after Emily's death. It felt like all their progress was slipping through their fingers. Lime overheard the conversation one evening as she was walking past the kitchen. Her parents had been discussing the latest developments, how neighbors were speaking out against Rex, how petitions were circulating to remove him. She stood frozen at the doorway, her heart racing in her chest. For a moment, everything felt suffocating. The one thing that had helped her heal, the one thing that had shown her how to love again, was being torn apart by fear and ignorance. Rex, sensing her distress, padded quietly to her side. She knelt down, hugging him tightly, her face buried in his fur. "Don't worry, Rex," she whispered. "I won't let them take you away." And as if to reassure her, Rex placed his head gently on her lap, his eyes full of understanding. For the first time in a long while, Lime didn't feel so alone. She was going to fight for him, just as he had fought for her. The next morning, Lime went to school with a determined heart. She carried her sketchbook as usual, but today it wasn't just filled with lonely creatures or sad drawings of animals. It was filled with something new, a story. A story about a dog named Rex who had saved lives, a dog who had been misunderstood, just like she had been. At lunch, she gathered her classmates, including Edward Mitchell, the boy who had once avoided her. She was going to tell them the truth. She stood up in front of them, holding her sketchbook like a shield. "This is Rex," she said, her voice stronger than it had ever been. "He's a hero. He saved 17 people. He saved a little boy, just like me." There were whispers among the students, but this time, Lime didn't back down. She flipped to the page with the drawing of Rex carrying a child out of a burning building. I know some of you are scared of him. Lime continued, her voice unwavering. But he's not dangerous. He's kind. He saved so many people, and now he's saving me. He's my best friend. Her words fell over the group like a wave, and for the first time, Lime saw something in their eyes. Curiosity, understanding, and even a little awe. Edward, standing off to the side, stepped forward. I've seen Rex, he said quietly, his voice still shaky from the fear that had once gripped him. I was scared of him, but now I know he's not dangerous. He saved me. The other students looked at him, their skepticism fading, replaced by something new. Respect. Slowly, one by one, they began to ask questions. They wanted to know more about Rex. They wanted to hear about his rescues, about the dog who had once been a hero but was now just trying to find a home. Back at home, the battle for Rex was far from over. As the neighborhood's prejudices festered, the Harvey family faced mounting pressure. Rex's health, which had improved slowly but surely, took a sudden turn. One morning, after an especially difficult night, he collapsed during their walk. Lime's scream echoed through the quiet street, bringing neighbors running. They found Rex lying on the grass, unable to rise, his breathing shallow and strained. It's the poisoning, Dr. Thompson said, her voice grave. It's taken a toll on him, and we're not sure how much longer he can fight. The words hung heavy in the air. It felt like the final blow, the thing they had all been dreading. But Lime refused to give up. She knelt beside Rex, gently cradling his head in her lap. You're not going anywhere, Rex, she whispered fiercely. You're going to be okay. We're not giving up. With the support of her family, Lime refused to let Rex's condition define their future. They called in favors, rallied their friends, and found the resources to keep him alive, if only for a little longer. They weren't just fighting for Rex anymore. They were fighting for everything he had come to represent: love, second chances, and the power to overcome prejudice. As the days passed, Rex's health improved. It wasn't a miracle, but it was close. His breathing steadied, and his strength returned bit by bit. And with each improvement, the Harvey family grew stronger too. They had seen firsthand how fear could tear a community apart, but they also knew how love could bring it back together. Rex's miraculous recovery became the turning point in the battle against prejudice. Slowly, more neighbors began to see Rex for the hero he was. The walls of fear began to crumble, and with it came a sense of unity. People who had once turned their backs on the Harvey family now began to speak out in support of Rex. It wasn't just Rex's survival that had changed their neighborhood. It was the realization that prejudice had no place in a community built on love. The Harvey family knew the road ahead wouldn't always be easy. There would still be challenges, still be moments of doubt. But as they looked at Rex, now standing strong by their side, they knew they had something no one could take away. A hero, a second chance, and a love that would never fade. As winter turned to spring in Reno, something extraordinary began to unfold within the Harvey family's home. With Rex's health stabilizing and the neighborhood starting to shift its perception, the family began to heal in ways they had never imagined. The small victories, Rex wagging his tail, Lime speaking more freely, and the quiet moments of understanding between them all, added up to a profound transformation. The biggest change was in Lime herself. Once a quiet, withdrawn child who had found solace only in the company of animals, she now radiated a quiet confidence. She was no longer the lonely girl who spoke to stray animals in secret. She was the young girl with a hero dog at her side, someone who had learned that being different didn't mean being less, and that sometimes healing came not from running away from fear, but from facing it head-on. One day, as Lime sat at her room drawing a picture of Rex, this time in full color, his eyes bright, his tail wagging proudly, she paused. It had been several months since Rex had saved Edward, and yet the story of that day still felt fresh. Lime had told it 1,000 times to classmates, neighbors, and even strangers. But now, she was ready to tell it in a new way, through her own art, through the lessons she had learned about courage, hope, and resilience. This time, her drawing wasn't just about Rex the rescue dog. It was about the entire community that had embraced him and, in turn, had embraced the idea of second chances. Lum didn't just see Rex as a dog anymore. She saw him as a symbol of everything they had been through, the pain, the prejudice, and the love that had healed it all. Meanwhile, the Harvey family was preparing for something big. The Rex Foundation had grown beyond their wildest expectations. Local shelters had joined in to offer medical care for rescued dogs. Neighborhoods that had once been divided now hosted workshops about animal rescue and responsible pet ownership. The message was spreading. Look beyond appearances, give second chances, and let love lead the way. Then, one evening, a letter arrived from a local newspaper. It was an invitation to the annual Community Awards ceremony, an event that honored local heroes. The Harvey family couldn't believe it when they saw that Rex had been nominated for a special recognition. "You've got to be kidding me," Clay said, staring at the letter. "Rex, nominated as a hero?" "Not just nominated," Ka said, her voice breaking with emotion. "He's been selected for the award. They're honoring him for his bravery, for everything he's done for this community." The award ceremony was held in the local park, a beautiful open space that overlooked Lake Reno. The sun hung low in the sky, casting a golden glow across the water as families and community members gathered. Rex, now healthier than ever, stood proudly beside Lime. His gray muzzle showed signs of age, but his eyes were as bright as ever, reflecting a spirit that had never wavered. As the ceremony began, the crowd stood in silent anticipation. The mayor, who had once supported the campaign against Rex, now stood before the microphone, his voice filled with awe. "Today, we honor a very special member of our community. Rex is not just a dog. He's a hero, a symbol of everything we've come to believe in: courage, love, and redemption. Rex's actions have inspired us all to look beyond our biases, to recognize that sometimes the most courageous individuals are not the ones who wear capes, but the ones who have the strength to love unconditionally." Lime's heart swelled with pride as Rex's name was called. She had told the story of his heroism 1,000 times, but this moment felt different, more real, more profound. As Rex was led to the stage, his tail wagging in excitement, the crowd erupted in applause. It was a celebration not just for a dog, but for everything he represented. When Rex received his award, a beautifully crafted medal and a plaque recognizing his service, Lime stood beside him, her small hand resting gently on his back. She whispered to him, "You did it, Rex. We did it. You saved us all." In that moment, Rex wasn't just a dog who had saved lives. He was a living testament to the power of second chances, to the healing that comes when we learn to love without fear. After the ceremony, as the evening settled in and families mingled, the Harvey family stood together, looking out over the lake. For the first time since they had moved to Reno, Ka felt a sense of peace. The weight of grief that had once consumed them, grief for Emily, for the life they had lost, had lifted. They were no longer haunted by what had been. They had found new meaning, new purpose in their love for each other and for Rex. But their journey was far from over. The next chapter in their lives was just beginning. As the seasons changed and their community continued to heal, Lime found herself at the center of a movement that believed in second chances for all. She began volunteering at the local shelter, working with animals who had been abandoned or misunderstood, just like Rex had been. She spoke at schools, teaching children the importance of compassion and understanding, of seeing beyond the surface and embracing differences. Rex, once a symbol of prejudice and fear, was now a symbol of love and transformation. His legacy lived on in the lives he had touched, in the hearts he had healed, and as Lime stood by his side, watching the sunset with a heart full of hope, she knew that Rex's greatest rescue wasn't one that had taken place in a burning building or a blizzard. His greatest rescue had been the healing of an entire community, and in doing so, he had saved the Harvey family from the darkness they had been living in. As I reflect on this journey with Rex, I realized that sometimes the most significant battles are not fought with weapons or strength, but with love and understanding. Rex showed us that courage isn't just about saving lives in the most dramatic way. Sometimes, it's about offering a gentle touch, a comforting presence, or the willingness to see others as they truly are. We all carry wounds, but it's through love, forgiveness, and second chances that we find healing. And in that healing, we find the strength to change the world one heart at a time. What has been your experience with second chances? Have you ever seen the power of unconditional love transform someone's life, including your own? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more stories of hope, love, and transformation. Together, we can create a world where every life, human or animal, gets the second chance it deserves.